Listen, Rahim Bakhsh's daughter is getting married, and I'm telling you now, we are all going. Abba's voice was firm, his eyes narrowing at Ami, who sat across from him, her face already twisted in disapproval. Ami scoffed, shaking her head. You and your obsession with these so-called relatives? I refuse to set foot in that house. Do you have any idea what kind of scandals Rahim Bakhsh's daughters have been involved in? The whole town knows about their honor, or rather, the lack of it. Why would I take my young daughters there? If you want to go, go by all means, but don't drag us into it. Her words made Abba's face darken. He took a step toward her, his hands curling into fists at his sides, as though he was struggling to restrain himself. Listen to me, Shamsha, he said, voice low but dangerous. I am respecting you right now only because our daughters are grown. Otherwise, I would have shut that venomous mouth of yours right this second. You think your family is so pure, and mine is full of degenerates, is that it? That's the garbage you've been feeding our children to? That their father's family is below them? Ami opened her mouth to retort, but Abba cut her off. Rahim Bakhsh is not a bad man, and neither are his children, and we will be attending that wedding. Farzana is just like my own daughter. Do you think I'd let her leave without my blessing? You're a mother too. Watch your tongue or one day you'll regret it. And with that, he stormed out of the room, leaving Ami fuming. She turned sharply, her eyes landing on me. I had been sitting nearby with my books open, but now I shrank under her gaze. We will regret it, she repeated mockingly. I raised my daughters to build a home, not destroy one. My daughters know how to respect their husbands and in-laws. They don't run their mouths like those girls. I gulped, unsure why I was suddenly under interrogation. Ami, what did I do? I asked innocently. Ami folded her arms, her expression sharp. I know exactly what you've been up to. Don't think I haven't noticed your sudden fondness for Rahim Bakhsh's house. My stomach twisted. Ami, I just go to help Chacha. He has no sons, only daughters, and he's getting old. Even Abba says we should check in on him. I avoided her piercing gaze. What could I tell her? That it wasn't charity that took me there, but the longing to catch a glimpse of her? That my heart raced at the sight of Rahim Bakhsh's second daughter? That I had convinced myself that helping was just a convenient excuse to see her? Ammi let out a bitter laugh. Helping, she repeated. His eldest daughter's deeds are known far and wide. A divorcee sent back to her father's house just 1 week after her wedding, and now she's about to get remarried. And yet your father is acting as though we should be honored to attend their wedding. Her voice dripped with disdain. He doesn't even think about the fact that we have daughters too. The moment people hear that we associate with Rahim Bakhsh's family, tongues will start wagging. When Farzana got divorced, did you forget how everyone whispered about her? They said she had no character, that she must have had an affair. Otherwise, why would a man divorce his bride within a week? She shook her head, disgusted. They act all righteous, with their heads covered and their voices soft. But I know the truth. Rahim Bakhsh's wife and daughters, each one is worse than the other. Wearing a dupatta over your head doesn't make you pious. That girl was hiding something. I know it. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my face neutral. Because if there was one thing I did know, it was that I had never seen anything impure in the girl my heart longed for. Ammi's hatred knew no bounds, and I took a deep breath, realizing that I stood no chance in changing her mind. Her grudge against Rahim Bakhshi and his family ran too deep, and the scandals surrounding Farzana's divorce had only added fuel to the fire. No one really knew why she had been divorced within a week of her marriage, but the gossip had been brutal. People whispered that she lacked character, that her husband had discovered something shameful about her and cast her out. The entire ordeal had nearly crushed Rahim Bakhsh. The weight of his daughter's disgrace had aged him overnight, but Abba had stood by him, offering strength where the world had only given scorn. And now, thanks to Abba, Farzana was getting married again, though Ami didn't know this yet. If she did, there would have been another storm in our house. Meanwhile, my 3 younger sisters, too afraid to sit in the room during our parents' argument, had been eavesdropping from behind the door. They rarely spoke up in front of Ami, but now the youngest one finally found her voice. Ami, we really want to go to Farzana Baji's wedding. Why won't you let us? It'll be so much fun. It's been so long since we've been to a wedding, she said excitedly. I smirked, knowing exactly what was about to happen. The next second, Ami grabbed a slipper from under the bed and flung it straight into the room. It hit my youngest sister squarely on the shoulder. You father-daughter duo has no other job than to test my patience, do you? She snapped. Your father makes a decision, and now you all start dancing like monkeys. No one is going anywhere. And with that, she stormed off to the kitchen, leaving my youngest sister sulking. I motioned for her to keep quiet. I knew Abba wouldn't back down, and if he had made up his mind, then there was no way Ami's protest would make a difference. Sure enough, 4 days later, we were all dressed and ready, heading toward Rahim Bakhsh's house for the wedding. The ceremony was being held in a small setup outside their house, a simple wedding attended by a handful of neighbors and close relatives. Everyone was there to witness Farzana's second chance at marriage, but fate had already written something else for her. Or perhaps she had written it herself. As soon as we arrived, my eyes instinctively searched for her. Sumaya, the second daughter of Rahim Bakhsh. She was breathtaking, her beauty so effortless that she didn't need grand clothes or heavy jewelry to shine. Draped in a simple dress, her dupatta delicately placed over her head, she greeted the guests with her soft smiles, graceful and composed, and then she turned toward us. My heart stumbled in my chest as she approached, but before she could even reach us, Ammi's sharp voice cut through the air like a blade. Now, who have you people trapped this time? Ammi sneered, her tone dripping with venom. Sumaya froze, the smile vanishing from her face. Everyone already knows what your sister did, don't they? I hope you made sure to tell the boy's family that she's been divorced once already. Ammi continued. Sumaya's complexion paled. She swallowed hard and nodded quickly. Yes, Chachi, of course. It's not something that can be hidden. Everyone knows, Ammi scoffed. Oh, really? Then you should have also told her that this time she should actually try to make her marriage work. A woman is supposed to adjust, no matter what. But I suppose your mother never taught you girls how to be good wives. Otherwise, why would she come running back within 1 week? Every word felt like a slap, not just to Sumaya but to me as well. Her face turned red with humiliation, her eyes darting downward, unable to meet Ammi's accusing gaze. And I stood there, burning with shame, knowing that we, my own family, had caused her that pain. I turned to Ammi and said, Abba is calling you. How long will you stand here? She looked around in confusion. Where is he? I casually pointed in a random direction. Over there. Without questioning, she walked off. The moment she left, I turned to Sumaya and lowered my gaze in guilt. I'm sorry for my mother's behavior, I said sincerely. Sumaya's eyes were wet, but she forced a small smile. Why are you apologizing? She asked softly. This is how the world treats divorced women. My sister wasn't at fault, but still, she was the one who was shamed. She took a deep breath, looking away as if she was afraid her emotions would spill over. Just because a woman gets married, does it mean she should erase her own existence? Should she bury all her dreams, silence all her needs? But that's exactly what society expects. A woman must transform herself completely, no matter how painful or unnatural it is. Her words made my heart ache. I wanted to tell her. I wasn't like that I understood. Don't worry, I said, trying to comfort her. Farzana Baji's wedding will go well. She will be happy in her new home. Amin, she whispered, before turning and walking away. I wanted to stop her. I wanted to tell her how much I loved her, how my heart ached for her, that I wanted her to be my home. But Ami's words from earlier still echoed in my mind. She had already humiliated Sumaya once tonight. If I confessed my feelings now, she would either reject me out of embarrassment or slap me right then and there. I clenched my fists and swallowed my words. Not today, not now. Meanwhile, Abba had assigned me to stay close to Rahim Bakhsh Chacha and oversee the wedding arrangements. Abba had even paid for the wedding feast himself. Rahim Bakhsh Chacha was a hardworking man, but he earned a modest salary at a fabric shop, just enough to cover basic necessities. Arranging weddings for his daughters was a challenge beyond his means, but Abba had always stood by him, treating him like a brother. In reality, Rahim Bakhsh Chacha was Abba's first cousin, the son of Abba's uncle. Technically, we should have called him Taya instead of Chacha, But everyone in the family called him that, so we did too. He had lived his entire life with dignity, working tirelessly to provide for his family. But after Farzana's divorce, people looked at him differently. His years of honesty and struggle meant nothing in front of society's judgment. The whispers, the side glances, the unspoken accusations, they never stopped. Even I didn't know what had truly caused Farzana's first marriage to fail. But one thing I did know, she was a good girl, and Abba must have known it too. That's why he had personally arranged her second marriage, hoping to secure her a happy future. After a while, the Barat arrived, filling the air with loud cheers and celebration. Firecrackers exploded. Laughter and music echoed in the night. People were surprised. Usually second marriages, especially for divorced women, were done quietly, almost shamefully. But this was a full-fledged wedding procession. Right beside me, Ami muttered under her breath, "I'm telling you, there must be something wrong with the groom. Otherwise, why would anyone marry a divorced girl from a poor family with such enthusiasm?" I inhaled deeply and turned to her. But before I could say anything, something caught her attention. As the groom stepped into the courtyard, Ami's eyes widened in shock. Her elbow dug into my ribs. "Hey, look, isn't that Shamsa?" she whispered urgently. I followed her gaze and my breath hitched. It was Shamsa Auntie, Abba's childhood friend Shehzad Bhai's wife. And she wasn't just attending the wedding. She was walking beside the groom. Ami's expression darkened. "What is she doing here?" she demanded. "And what does she have to do with the groom?" Ami was still struggling to make sense of everything when I leaned in and, as gently as I could, dropped the bombshell. "Ami, the groom is Zubair, Shehzad Uncle's son. Obviously, Shamsa Auntie is here. After all, when I get married, would you let go of my hand?" The realization dawned on her face instantly. Her expression turned a deep shade of red, her jaw tightening in anger. "Of course your father is behind this," she hissed. "Why does he always have to meddle in Rahim Bakhsh's business? Does he have any idea why that girl was divorced? No, because they hid the reason. There must be something wrong with her. And now your father has gone and married her off to his own best friend's son?" I exhaled, bracing myself for a full-blown meltdown. But thankfully, Abba was nowhere nearby. Otherwise, she might have gone after him right then and there. The groom was seated on the stage, the guests settled in their places, and soon the Qazi Sahib arrived to commence the nikah ceremony. Then Farzana Baji was escorted in. The crowd gathered closer, watching attentively. The ceremony was about to begin, but before the nikah could proceed, Farzana Baji suddenly spoke, her voice soft but steady. The entire room fell silent. She was addressing the Qazi Sahib, and then in a loud and clear voice, the Qazi Sahib announced, "The bride wishes to speak to the groom before the nikah. She has conditions that she would like to clarify first." Gasps rippled through the audience. Murmurs of speculation filled the room. Ammi turned to me, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "There," she sneered. "The drama begins. I told you your father should never have interfered with these people, and now, thanks to him, we're about to be humiliated in front of everyone." I was equally stunned. I had never seen Farzana Baji like this. She had always been quiet, head bowed, draped modestly in her dupatta, a shadow of obedience. But now, she sat tall, her eyes unwavering, her voice filled with an authority I had never heard before. This was not a woman burdened by shame. This was a woman who had something to say, and she wasn't afraid anymore. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on her, waiting, questioning, judging. Even her father, Rahim Bakhsh Chacha, looked panicked. He moved to her side, whispering urgently. His eyes shone with fear, pleading, perhaps begging her to reconsider whatever she was about to say. But Farzana Baji only reached for his hands, held them tightly, and gave him a reassuring nod. Then she lifted her gaze, first at her family, then at Zubair. Every breath in the room was held in suspense. And then she spoke. "I should have said this at the time of the proposal," she began, her voice firm, yet filled with quiet dignity. "But I was not allowed to step forward." A pause. "I tried many times to discuss this before today, but I was stopped. So now I apologize for having to say it here, in front of everyone. She took a deep breath, her fingers gripping the edge of her dupatta. But I have no choice, because I refuse to let my second marriage end the way my first one did. I refuse to carry the stain of divorce again, for reasons that are not my fault. A stunned silence spread across the hall. Every whisper died out. People leaned forward, eyes widened, waiting. What would she demand? I could feel my own heart pounding, because in that moment, one thing was crystal clear. Farzana Baji was not the same woman who had once quietly accepted her fate. This time she was in control, and whatever she was about to say next would change everything. This society is ruthless, Farzana Baji's voice trembled slightly, but her resolve remained firm. For us women, living with dignity becomes impossible just because we have small wishes, little needs. The moment we dare to express them, we are ridiculed, shamed, and cast aside. That's why, before stepping into another marriage, I want to be upfront about my conditions. A hush fell over the crowd. The whispers grew louder, restless murmurs circling the room. Everyone wanted to know, what was she going to demand? Shamsa Auntie shifted uncomfortably, her face tight with anxiety. She turned to Ami, whispering, "What's wrong with this girl at the last moment? What if she humiliates us in front of everyone?" For the first time, I saw a groom's mother afraid. Normally, such worry was reserved for the bride's family. Ami, who was already fuming, smirked. "Sister, you should have asked me before agreeing to this match," she said with an air of superiority. "You finalized this proposal without thinking, and now you have to deal with the consequences. If you had come to me, I would have told you clearly, never to marry your son into that family." Shamsa Auntie's expression stiffened. "But your husband was the one who arranged this," she snapped. "He assured us that the girl was respectable." Ammi let out a laugh. "Men know nothing about women's true nature," she said dismissively. "Only we know what happens behind closed doors. There is something wrong with Rahim Baksh's daughters. Otherwise, why was this girl divorced in the first place? If her husband was at fault, wouldn't they have made a scene? Instead, they kept quiet. Silence is guilt, my dear." Before Ami could add more venom to the conversation, Zubair, the groom, spoke up. "Farzana," he said, his voice calm but firm, "say whatever you need to. If what you ask for is reasonable, I have no objection." His words strengthened Farzana Baji's confidence. She took a deep breath and looked directly at him, her voice gentler now. "When I got married the first time, I was so happy," she began. "I believed I was stepping into a new life full of love and respect. But my dream ended on the very first night." The room fell silent again. Ami scoffed under her breath, but even she listened. "My husband," she continued, her eyes darkening with the memory, "held my hand and pulled me into a group of his friends. Without asking me, without my consent, he started dancing with me in front of them. I was newly married, a guest in a house full of strangers. I was too shy to lift my head, yet he forced me to become a spectacle." Gasps echoed across the room. Some guests covered their mouths in shock. Others exchanged glances, processing what they were hearing. My head was lowered in modesty, but his friends laughed and cheered, their phones recording every move. When I tried to pull away, he became angry, and that was just the beginning. Shamsa Auntie's face paled. Even Ami's smirk faded slightly. "The next morning before Fajr prayer, I got up to pray," she continued, her voice steady, but her fingers clenched into fists. "But my husband stopped me. He told me not to act in front of him. He said he hated religious women, that praying was pretending. I told him I would not give up my faith, but he wouldn't allow it." Her voice cracked slightly, but she pressed on. "I was heartbroken, but I swallowed my pain. I left it to Allah. I told myself that if I remained patient, things would get better." She looked up at Zubair now, locking eyes with him. But the next evening, he brought a dress, a disgusting, revealing dress. He threw it at me and said, "My friends are throwing a party at the farmhouse tonight. Wear this, we're going together." A loud murmur rippled through the audience. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. "I refused," she continued, her voice growing stronger. I told him I wouldn't dress like that in front of his friends. I wouldn't go to such a place. But he didn't listen. He forced me to wear it. I stood in front of the mirror, ashamed of my own reflection. I had never worn anything like it in my life. Her breathing grew heavier. And then, when he dragged me to the farmhouse, I realized who his friends really were. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just a story. This was a nightmare. And she had lived it. The room was silent, yet the weight of Farzana Baji's words echoed through every heart. She lifted her gaze again, her voice steady despite the storm she had just unleashed. In my first marriage, I was forced to live in a house where religion was mocked, where dignity was a joke. My husband's friends and their wives were just like him, dressed in revealing clothes, laughing loudly, embracing each other without shame. And he expected me to do the same. But I wasn't raised that way. I had grown up knowing that prayer was my refuge, that my dignity was my own to guard, that I wasn't an object to be displayed for entertainment. She paused, her fingers twisting the edge of her dupatta, as if grounding herself. I tried to endure it. For 4 days I swallowed my pain, hoping that if I was patient, things would change. But on the 5th day, when I refused to let myself sink into that pit of sin, my husband uttered those 3 words and ended our marriage. Just like that. A hush fell over the room. I heard a few women sniffle, some shifting in discomfort. Others, especially the mothers, clutched their daughters' hands, as if silently vowing to never let them suffer the same fate. Tears shimmered in Rahim Bakhsh Chacha's eyes. His hands trembled as he turned to Zubair, voice breaking. My daughter has always been pure-hearted. She truly tried, but she could not become what they wanted her to be. And when she refused to change her soul for them, they discarded her like she was nothing. I stayed silent all these years, bearing the shame of her divorce, because I could not bear to see her slandered. But today, my daughter has spoken the truth. If you truly wish to marry her, then I ask only one thing: respect her honor. Zubair stood up. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look around for approval. He simply reached out, took Rahim Bakhsh Chacha's trembling hands, and gripped them firmly. This isn't a condition, he said, voice strong. This is a right, one that should be given without question. We are Muslims. How can anyone deny another Muslim the right to pray, to live with dignity? His eyes softened as he turned to Farzana. Not only do I accept your conditions, but I promise you, I will never stand in the way of your faith. I am honored to have a wife who will raise our children with these values. If anyone should be ashamed, it is those who claim to be Muslim, yet mock the very foundation of our faith. For the first time that night, Rahim Bakhsh Chacha's tears were not of sorrow, but of relief. Overwhelmed, he fell to his knees in gratitude. But Zubair caught him before he could bow too low, pulling him into a tight embrace. And just like that, the nikah began. Farzana Baji was no longer a discarded woman, no longer a whisper of shame. She was a bride again. She had chosen her path, and Allah had given her a partner who respected it. Ammi had been silent throughout the entire scene, but as we returned home after the wedding, Abba finally spoke. He sat her down, his voice calm but firm. I have told you many times, Shamsha, never speak ill of another's daughter. We also have daughters. If God forbid one of our girls ended up with a husband like Farzana's first husband, tell me, what would we do? Would we force her to stay with a man like that? No. We would bring her back home. We would help her rebuild her life. And then we would be the ones slandered, just like Rahim Bakhsh was. Abba's piercing gaze held Ammi in place. Do you understand now? He asked. Do you see how easy it is to judge when it's someone else's daughter? But when it's your own, the world looks different, doesn't it? Tears welled up in Ammi's eyes. She looked away ashamed. And then Abba delivered the final blow. I've been thinking, he said. Rahim Bakhsh has raised his daughters well. I want to bring Sumaya into this house as our Bahu, for our Asfar. I nearly jumped out of my skin. My heart pounded in my chest, my pulse roaring in my ears. I turned to Ammi, frozen, waiting for her reaction. Would she say no? Would she lash out in anger? But to my shock, she didn't. Instead, she exhaled deeply as if releasing years of resentment. "I've realized something today," she murmured. "Rahim Bakhsh's daughters are not what I thought. They are pure, raised with good values. I see that now." Then for the first time, she smiled at me. "I have no objection to Sumaya becoming my daughter-in-law," she said. "Once you find a stable job, we'll send a proposal." My entire world shifted. I felt like I was floating. I had spent years praying for this, whispering her name in my tahajjud prayers, hoping for the impossible. And now, Allah had answered me. Sumaya would be mine. She would be my wife. As I sat there, overwhelmed with gratitude, I realized something else too. Farzana Beji's prayers had been answered as well. She had asked for a husband who would respect her faith, and Allah had given her exactly that. Now she and Zubair lived a life of peace, building a home filled with love and iman. Even Shamsa auntie, who had once been so nervous, now praised her Bahu to everyone. As for Ami, she had changed too, and all because of one truth. No one should ever be judged without knowing their real story, especially a woman, especially someone's daughter.